I do not support corruption.
Thank you very much for supporting Views and Voice Media. Today we will take a look at how Juliet Holness generate chaos in Parliament by doing this. Immediately as Markgolding told her he got a motion, she excused herself from Parliament.
I have a motion.
Excuse me one more.
Then the Deputy Speaker took over the proceeding with Pernel Charles Jr. and the other members of the government. They bring the Parliament into disrepute by not allowing Markgolding to proceed with his presentation.
Waiting judicial decisions that the motion relates to a matter that is now before the court, and if it is, because there is a matter now under judicial consideration, it ought not to be discussed as it is sub judice. At this time, I am now ruling that this motion will not be entertained.
I said they bring the Parliament into disrepute. Listen to what Juliet Holness said when she returned and took over from Eroy Clark. Pay attention and listen to her keenly.
Member, in response, as you realize, we have, and myself particularly as Speaker, have repeated on many occasions that things need to get to the Parliament with adequate time so that we can read and we can ensure we follow the proper procedures. We were in fact notified by email that a motion would come, but it didn't come until just before I got to Parliament. And it does take some time to review and ensure that motions are properly laid. A signed copy of the motion came to me at the desk when Member Paulwell came to the desk during the sitting of the Parliament. And I just came out for a moment a while ago, and I note the opposition walking out. I was coming back to tell them I'd gone out because I was just completing my review so that they could go ahead and debate if they so choose. However, even though they heard as much, they continued to walk out.
Now, listen to what Markgolding said while he was outside the Parliament and tell me if the PNP was wrong or if it was the JLP being too defensive over the whole issue. Why are they so shaky if they are so innocent as they stated? Like and subscribe. Share your comment below.
In Gordon House, in the House of Representatives, I was prevented from doing so on what I regard to be a spurious basis, a basis that cannot hold water. The basis that was put forward was that the matters on which my motion was based are now sub judice. In other words, because the Prime Minister has apparently sought judicial review of certain matters arising from what the Integrity Commission has decided in relation to his matter. However, my motion is not dealing with the substance of that report, but is dealing with his own conduct as Prime Minister. And I wish to read the motion now so you can hear it. Whereas there is a ministerial code of conduct in place from 2002 that governs the conduct of members of the cabinet, and whereas the Prime Minister did not inform the people of Jamaica that he was being investigated by the Integrity Commission from as far back as August 2023 for illicit enrichment, and whereas the concealment of this information by the Prime Minister is a breach of the Ministerial Code of Conduct that guided the Prime Minister in removing from office ministers serving in the cabinet over which he presided, and whereas the annual reports of the Integrity Commission for 22-23 and for 23-24 stated that several members of Parliament, initially 6 and then 8, were under investigation for illicit enrichment, but none had come forward to disclose that he or she was under investigation. And whereas the Integrity Commission's investigation report on the 17th September 2024 tabled in Parliament named the Prime Minister as being under investigation for illicit enrichment. And whereas the Prime Minister, as Chairman of Cabinet, instructed members of Cabinet not to divulge the name of any member under investigation for illicit enrichment, contrary to the spirit of the Ministerial Code of Conduct. And whereas the actions of the Prime Minister have caused and continue to cause severe damage to the trust necessary for good order and respect for public office, be it resolved that this Honourable House condemns the Prime Minister for not maintaining ethical standards of transparency and openness in government. Secondly, censures the Prime Minister for his acts of covering up and concealment of the names, including his own, of those members of the Cabinet and or Parliament of which he was and may still be aware, but has kept them in positions of influence in the Cabinet with the effect of further undermining public trust in the institutions of government, and declares that the actions of the Prime Minister have severely undermined his credibility and trustworthiness, and that he no longer enjoys the confidence of this House. That was the motion that was to be put forward today and hopefully debated next week. We did not want it debated the same day that it was tabled. The Prime Minister is not here in Jamaica. That would not be right or proper. However, we were not allowed to proceed with the tabling of the motion because the Speaker herself had removed herself because the matter affected her husband, and the Deputy Speaker ruled that the motion was improperly brought in breach of the standing orders, relying on the sub judice rule, and so the motion will not go forward. And we think that that is an abuse of the rules of Parliament, and no confidence motions have a very high place in our constitutional arrangements. If a no confidence motion is passed in Parliament, the Governor-General has to dissolve Parliament and call elections. So that is in section, I think, 64 of the Constitution, subsection 5. So for them to block the opposition from bringing a motion on the alleged basis that the matter is sub judice is really, in my view, a bad and sad day for our democracy. Again, it's an example of freedom of speech, freedom of association, our democratic principles being undermined by the misuse of power by the majority in Parliament. It's a very serious matter, and that is why we asked the media to come and hear what we had to say. Thank you.
No, that you were on